Most people believe that success belongs to those who move fast, shine early, and collect achievements before anyone else. But what if the opposite is often true? What if the rarest personalities are designed to bloom slowly because they are building something deeper than status, something that cannot be rushed without destroying its foundation? If you have ever felt out of place while watching others race ahead, this message may explain your entire life. Before we go further, write the words, "I embrace my timing," in the comments. That simple phrase is more than engagement. It is a declaration that you refuse to measure your worth by someone else's clock. Subscribe to Hidden Oasis, like this video, and stay with me until the very end, because the final insight reveals a truth that even powerful people quietly fear. Sometimes the greatest advantage is arriving after everyone else believes the race is already over. Throughout history, the people who changed civilizations were rarely celebrated in their youth. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this better than most. After years serving Florence, exile stripped him of power, reputation, and influence before he wrote Time's The Prince, the work that immortalized his name. His life reflected a forgotten principle. Deep understanding often emerges after disappointment, not before it. Ancient Stoics, Renaissance thinkers, and later psychologists all recognize that genuine maturity cannot be accelerated because wisdom is forged through repeated contact with reality rather than endless optimism. Modern culture celebrates early success, viral recognition, and constant visibility, creating the illusion that anyone progressing slowly is somehow failing. Yet behavioral psychology reveals that delayed development often produces stronger emotional regulation, greater resilience, and more accurate judgment because experience gradually weakens youthful illusions. This forgotten truth remains hidden because societies reward visible achievement while overlooking the invisible inner architecture that makes lasting greatness possible. Now that you understand the forgotten roots of delayed greatness, we can enter Machiavelli's hidden territory. Here, success is neither accidental nor fair. It follows invisible laws, shaping perception, patience, and power. The first 5 reveal why extraordinary people almost always appear to arrive later than everyone else in life. The first law of delayed power is invisible preparation. Rare personalities spend years building judgment while others chase applause. Their progress seems painfully slow because they invest in understanding instead of appearance. Every disappointment becomes a private laboratory where character hardens without witnesses. Machiavelli understood that foundations hidden beneath the ground determine whether a fortress survives attack. Likewise, your quiet seasons strengthen perception, emotional control, and strategic patience. Friends may mistake your restraint for weakness, yet they cannot measure the invisible skills accumulating beneath ordinary routines. When opportunity finally appears, you respond with calm precision instead of desperate reaction. People call you fortunate, forgetting the countless unseen decisions that prepared your moment. Delayed success is rarely delayed potential. It is disciplined strength refusing premature exposure until timing transforms preparation into undeniable authority. Because endurance quietly compounds wisdom, your future influence becomes impossible to imitate by those addicted to immediate validation. The second law of delayed power is selective silence. Most people reveal ambitions too early, inviting skepticism, envy, and unnecessary resistance. Rare personalities understand that unspoken intentions remain protected from manipulation. Machiavelli advised rulers to control appearances because perception shapes outcomes before actions ever do. When you resist explaining every plan, you preserve flexibility and observe how others expose themselves through careless conversation. Silence becomes information rather than emptiness. It uncovers hidden loyalties, fragile egos, and unconscious motives impossible to detect while speaking constantly. Modern psychology confirms that attentive listeners gather richer social data than relentless talkers. Every restrained response strengthens your emotional discipline while weakening your opponent's confidence. They begin projecting assumptions onto your quietness, revealing fears you never requested. Eventually, your actions speak with undeniable force, making explanations unnecessary and respect unavoidable. Through disciplined mystery alone, your greatest advantage remains unknown until results force everyone to reconsider everything. The third law of delayed power is emotional endurance. Early achievers often mistake excitement for strength, but lasting influence depends upon remaining stable during uncertainty. Rare personalities develop unusual resilience because repeated setbacks teach them to separate temporary emotion from permanent identity. Neuroscience suggests that repeated exposure to manageable adversity improves regulation, reducing impulsive reactions over time. Machiavelli recognized that leaders unable to master themselves inevitably become servants of circumstance. Every disappointment becomes training rather than punishment when interpreted correctly. Instead of asking why hardship targets you, ask what capacity it quietly builds. That question transforms suffering into strategic education. Others collapse because they expect comfort. You endure because you expect reality. Eventually, people trust your judgment precisely because panic rarely controls your decisions. Calm becomes your invisible reputation, long before success becomes your visible achievement. Hidden resilience eventually attracts extraordinary opportunities because trustworthy composure is exceptionally rare under pressure. The fourth law of delayed power is strategic observation. Before changing the world, you must first understand the hidden patterns directing human behavior. Rare personalities spend extraordinary amounts of time watching incentives, contradictions, and repeated mistakes instead of chasing constant stimulation. Machiavelli examined people without sentimental illusions, discovering that predictable desires frequently disguise themselves as noble intentions. When you cultivate careful observation, manipulation becomes easier to recognize and harder to influence you. Behavioral science reaches similar conclusions, showing that unconscious biases repeatedly shape everyday choices. Observation, therefore, becomes protection. It also becomes opportunity because those noticing invisible patterns consistently act before obvious trends emerge. While impatient competitors rush toward immediate rewards, you quietly position yourself where tomorrow's advantages will appear. Patience transforms information into leverage, and leverage quietly becomes enduring power over time. Those who understand motives before movements consistently shape outcomes, while everyone else merely reacts too late forever. The fifth law of delayed power is disciplined identity. Rare personalities refuse allowing temporary failure to define permanent worth. They recognize that reputation changes slowly, while character develops daily through countless unnoticed choices. Machiavelli valued adaptability, yet adaptation never required abandoning inner direction. Instead, it demanded adjusting methods without surrendering purpose. You become dangerous when external circumstances no longer dictate internal standards. Every challenge tests whether your values remain steady under pressure. Most people negotiate against themselves before anyone else does. You refuse that invisible defeat. Psychologists describe this as internal locus of control, the belief that meaningful influence begins within personal responsibility. Such thinking strengthens persistence, because setbacks become problems requiring solutions rather than verdicts declaring inadequacy. Delayed success then becomes psychologically sustainable because your confidence rests upon disciplined conduct instead of immediate applause or public recognition. True authority emerges quietly after unwavering consistency defeats every fashionable distraction completely. Having uncovered the foundations of delayed power, we now descend beneath visible behavior into the invisible structures governing influence itself. These unspoken rules rarely appear in books because they operate beneath awareness. Those recognizing them stop chasing approval and begin shaping perception, decisions, relationships, authority, and lasting psychological advantage with quiet precision. The first unspoken rule that governs influence is that perception almost always defeats intention. People rarely respond to who you truly are. They respond to the story their minds construct from limited information, emotional assumptions, and personal bias. Machiavelli understood that rulers succeeded not because everyone loved them, but because they mastered the appearance of competence, certainty, and stability. Modern psychology supports this observation through the halo effect, where one dominant impression colors every future judgment. This means your confidence, composure, and consistency often matter before your actual abilities become visible. Rare personalities discover this lesson late because they initially believe effort alone earns recognition. Eventually, reality teaches otherwise. Influence begins when you intentionally shape the signals others unconsciously interpret every day. Your posture, timing, restraint, and emotional control silently communicate authority long before words attempt persuasion. Those ignoring perception constantly wonder why their intentions remain misunderstood despite genuine sincerity and remarkable capability. The second unspoken rule that governs influence is that emotional dependence destroys strategic freedom. The moment your happiness depends upon another person's approval, you surrender invisible leverage. Machiavelli warned against placing essential power into uncertain hands, because dependency always creates vulnerability. Human relationships follow the same pattern. Individuals desperately seeking acceptance unconsciously negotiate from weakness, accepting disrespect simply to preserve connection. Behavioral scientists describe similar dynamics through attachment patterns influencing confidence, boundaries, and decision-making. Rare personalities gradually realize that genuine influence requires emotional independence rather than emotional isolation. You care without becoming controlled. You appreciate relationships without making them your foundation. This quiet shift transforms every interaction because fear no longer dictates your responses. Others immediately sense greater stability, even without understanding its source. Ironically, the less desperately you seek validation, the more naturally respect begins surrounding your presence. Freedom from emotional dependence creates calm confidence that neither manipulation nor rejection can easily weaken again. The third unspoken rule that governs influence is that uncertainty quietly magnifies authority when managed with discipline. Most people rush to eliminate ambiguity because certainty feels emotionally comfortable. Yet Machiavelli recognized that complete predictability invites exploitation. When every intention becomes obvious, opponents prepare responses before your actions unfold. Rare personalities gradually understand the strategic value of measured unpredictability. They remain consistent in values while flexible in methods, preventing others from reducing them to simple patterns. Cognitive psychology demonstrates that unpredictable outcomes capture greater attention because the human brain constantly searches for missing information. Carefully controlled uncertainty therefore increases psychological presence. Others think about you longer because they cannot confidently anticipate your next decision. This never requires deception or manipulation. Instead, it requires resisting unnecessary explanations, premature commitments, and habitual reactions. Quiet flexibility preserves options while strengthening perceived confidence. Those mastering disciplined uncertainty shape conversations, negotiations, and relationships without demanding attention through loud displays or dramatic confrontation. The fourth unspoken rule that governs influence is that scarcity creates value far more reliably than constant availability. Human beings instinctively appreciate what appears limited because rarity signals importance. Machiavelli understood that leaders weakened themselves when they became excessively accessible, allowing familiarity to erode respect. Modern behavioral economics describes comparable patterns through scarcity bias, where perceived rarity increases desirability independent of objective quality. Rare personalities eventually stop distributing unlimited attention, endless explanations, and immediate responses. Instead, they invest their energy deliberately, recognizing that disciplined availability protects both focus and influence. This does not mean becoming arrogant or emotionally distant. It means respecting your own attention enough that others naturally learn to respect it as well. Constant accessibility quietly communicates unlimited supply. Purposeful selectivity communicates significance. Over time, people begin valuing your presence because it reflects intention rather than convenience. Scarcity transforms ordinary interactions into meaningful moments remembered long after conversations quietly conclude together. The fifth unspoken rule that governs influence is that people reveal themselves long before they reveal their intentions. Words often conceal motives, but repeated behavior quietly exposes priorities impossible to disguise forever. Machiavelli advised observing actions rather than promises because survival depended upon recognizing genuine loyalty before betrayal appeared. Contemporary psychology reaches remarkably similar conclusions through behavioral consistency, demonstrating that habits predict future conduct more accurately than stated beliefs. Rare personalities become exceptional judges of character because they patiently collect patterns instead of chasing impressions. They notice who changes under pressure, who exaggerates achievements, who respects invisible boundaries, and who remains dependable without recognition. This disciplined observation protects them from manipulation while strengthening wiser decisions. Instead of reacting emotionally to isolated moments, they evaluate recurring tendencies across time. Influence expands because accurate judgment replaces hopeful assumption. Those consistently reading behavior rather than comforting narratives avoid predictable disappointments and quietly gain enduring strategic advantage over everyone. Knowledge changes nothing until it becomes disciplined behavior. These strategic disciplines convert invisible understanding into measurable transformation. They are not motivational habits, but deliberate practices that strengthen judgment, emotional control, and influence through repetition. Master them patiently, and delayed success becomes less an accident than the predictable consequence of disciplined psychological advantage. The first strategic discipline for delayed power is practicing intentional solitude every single day. Modern culture treats uninterrupted activity as evidence of importance, yet constant stimulation gradually weakens perception. Machiavelli valued careful reflection because impulsive leaders became prisoners of immediate emotion. Reserve uninterrupted time without conversations, entertainment, or digital distractions, allowing your thoughts to settle naturally. During these moments, examine recent decisions without defending yourself or seeking comforting excuses. Ask which reactions served long-term objectives and which merely satisfied temporary emotions. This habit strengthens self-awareness because honest observation gradually exposes recurring weaknesses before circumstances exploit them. Neuroscience suggests quiet reflection improves emotional regulation while reducing automatic responses driven by stress. Over weeks, your judgment becomes calmer, your priorities become clearer, and unnecessary conflicts quietly disappear. Solitude, therefore, becomes strategic preparation rather than loneliness. By repeatedly mastering your internal world before confronting the external one, you develop an advantage impossible to purchase, imitate, or unexpectedly lose under pressure. The second strategic discipline for delayed power is controlling your emotional tempo before attempting to influence anyone else. Most people react at the speed of their feelings, allowing frustration, excitement, or fear to dictate decisions with lasting consequences. Rare personalities deliberately slow their internal rhythm whenever circumstances become emotionally charged. Before answering criticism, negotiating conflict, or celebrating success, pause long enough for reason to regain command. Machiavelli recognized that predictable emotional reactions gave opponents opportunities to manipulate outcomes without resistance. Today, psychological research confirms that brief pauses improve decision quality by reducing impulsive behavior and strengthening executive control. Create a personal rule that important responses never occur during emotional peaks. Instead, allow reflection to replace urgency. This simple discipline gradually rewires habitual behavior until composure becomes automatic. Others begin perceiving unusual confidence because your actions consistently appear measured instead of reactive. Emotional tempo eventually becomes invisible authority, enabling wiser choices while quietly frustrating anyone hoping to exploit your impatience, insecurity, or uncontrolled emotional impulses. The third strategic discipline for delayed power is documenting reality instead of trusting memory alone. Human recollection constantly rewrites events according to emotion, preference, and personal bias. Rare personalities protect themselves by recording observations, decisions, mistakes, and unexpected outcomes with disciplined honesty. Keep a private journal, describing situations exactly as they occurred before interpretations reshape the narrative. Machiavelli carefully studied political successes and failures because written reflection revealed recurring patterns invisible during emotional involvement. Over time, your journal becomes a strategic archive, exposing strengths worth repeating and weaknesses requiring correction. You begin recognizing predictable cycles in relationships, negotiations, finances, and personal habits long before consequences become irreversible. Psychology consistently demonstrates that reflective writing improves learning by strengthening objective analysis rather than emotional storytelling. Every honest entry increases self-knowledge while reducing comforting illusions. Eventually, you stop repeating identical mistakes because documented evidence quietly replaces selective memory. Accurate records transform experience into practical wisdom, creating steady progress instead of endlessly recycling familiar disappointments throughout your entire life. The fourth strategic discipline for delayed power is deliberately choosing difficult responsibilities before circumstances force them upon you. Comfort feels attractive because it demands little immediate effort, yet prolonged comfort quietly weakens resilience, confidence, and adaptability. Rare personalities regularly accept demanding tasks that stretch existing abilities beyond familiar limits. Machiavelli admired leaders prepared for adversity before crises arrived because preparation transformed uncertainty into manageable challenge. Select one responsibility each week, requiring greater patience, courage, or discipline than feels comfortable. Whether initiating uncomfortable conversations, learning unfamiliar skills, or accepting greater accountability, voluntary difficulty strengthens psychological endurance. Behavioral science supports this approach, showing controlled exposure to challenge increases confidence while reducing avoidance behaviors over time. Every completed challenge expands your belief in your own capability. Eventually, obstacles appearing overwhelming to others become ordinary responsibilities for you. Consistent voluntary discomfort creates hidden reserves of strength, ensuring future opportunities find someone already prepared, rather than someone desperately scrambling to become ready overnight. The fifth strategic discipline for delayed power is measuring success through accumulated capability rather than immediate recognition. Society constantly encourages comparison because visible achievements create powerful emotional reactions. Rare personalities reject this trap by tracking internal growth instead of external applause. At the end of each week, evaluate whether your judgment improved, your emotional discipline strengthened, your communication became clearer, and your resilience deepened. Machiavelli understood that durable authority depended upon real competence rather than temporary popularity. Recognition frequently arrives late, while capability compounds quietly from consistent effort. By focusing on development instead of validation, you eliminate the emotional volatility created by praise and criticism. Modern psychology associates this mindset with intrinsic motivation, producing greater persistence and long-term satisfaction. Gradually, your confidence becomes independent of changing opinions because it rests upon measurable personal evolution. When recognition finally arrives, it merely confirms what disciplined preparation had already made permanently true within your character and enduring purpose. Today, you have seen that delayed success is not a punishment, but a different path toward lasting power. While others chase speed, you can cultivate judgment, emotional discipline, strategic patience, and quiet resilience. These qualities rarely attract immediate applause, yet they create influence that survives changing trends and temporary victories. Remember, Machiavelli never promised fairness. He revealed reality, where those mastering themselves eventually master circumstances. If you recognize yourself in this rare personality, stop comparing your timeline with anyone else's. Continue strengthening your mind, refining your character, and protecting your attention. Every disciplined decision quietly compounds until the world notices. If this message challenged your perspective, write, "I embrace my timing" in the comments. Subscribe to Hidden Oasis for more timeless philosophy, psychological insight, and practical wisdom. Like this video and share it with someone still questioning their pace. Your greatest advantage may never be arriving first. It may be arriving fully prepared when everyone else has exhausted themselves chasing appearances. Until our next journey, remain patient, remain observant, and remember that invisible growth always precedes undeniable power. Keep seeking wisdom beyond appearances, because the deepest victories belong to those willing to mature before they dominate their destiny with purpose.